Hello, and welcome to Budget Commander. On this channel, we'll discuss Magic the Gathering topics with a focus on playing Commander on a budget. We'll cover things like deck building, top cards, deck techs, and more. Let's get started. Hey friends, today we have a set review of the new set Throne of Eldraine that comes out or releases today. The goal of this video is to show you some of the new cards that are coming out that I think might see play in Commander, and also some similar cards that already see play in Commander. This is a budget channel, so we're only going to talk about commons and uncommons from Throne of Eldraine, seeing as it's hard to really tell if the rares or mythics will be $2 or under, which is kind of what I consider budget. So we're going to start out by talking about commanders that might see play. There's a new guy, Sir Conrad the Grim. Seems pretty cool. Similar to Zulaport Cutthroat and Vindictive Vampire. When creatures die, your opponents each lose 1 life or are actually dealt damage. But also, if creatures go into your graveyard from anywhere, or they leave your graveyard, certain Conrad also activates, dealing opponents damage. And he can trigger himself by paying 1 in a black, and each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So if you get a hit on a creature, deal damage to each of your opponents. Seems cool. We might see him coming out. Another one, probably the one I'm most excited about, is Serkera the Bold. She's a 3/3 for 5 human knight, and whenever Serkera the Bold or an instant or sorcery spell you control deals damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. She also has the activated ability of tap and deal 1 damage to any target. So if you need to, you can use her to get rid of small utility creatures or help out after combat and deal that last bit of damage to get rid of a big creature that's within 1 of lethal. But she's most similar to Outpost Siege or Chandra Pyromaster, in that she can exile the top card of your library and then you can play it this turn. Outpost Siege, red players play that all the time. I see Chandra Pyromaster a little bit less often, but her 0 ability does the same thing. So extra card advantage for red, which is cool. And then Grumkeeper the Generous is a 3 to cast 3/3 Goblin Shaman. Each other non-human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So he just likes +1/+1 counters. I'm sure somebody can find some kind of combo out there, but when I first saw him, I thought of the Allies deck one of my friends has, which was similar. Grumkeeper was most similar to the Kazula Warlord, where whenever an ally enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. And then you could also include the Ivy Lane Denizen, which I see sometimes whenever a green creature enters, put a +1/+1 creature on that. So, if you had all 3 of these out, each of your green allies would be entering, non-human green allies would be entering with a +1/+1 counter. So, he seems cool. The red one is the one I'm most excited about, but all 3 of them I think we'll see some play in my meta. Getting on to white cards. All That Glitters is an aura that gives +1/+1 to the enchanted creature for each artifact and enchantment you control, similar to Armored Ascension, which does that for planes and gives out flying, as well as Imperial Armor, which gives you +1/+1 equal to the number of cards in your hand. Then we have the Archon of Absolution, which will absolutely see play. It's a 3/2 flyer for 4, and it has pro white. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. So deters your opponents, taxes your opponent for attacking you. Same exact ability as Baird, Steward of Argive, which I see pretty often, and also similar to the Blazing Archon, which is a 5/6 flyer that just says creatures can't attack you at all. So that Archon of Absolution comes down on turn 4, which is a lot nicer than having a 9-drop that deters your opponents. So good card there. Deafening Silence. This is a cool card. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. So this hoses the Spells Matters decks. And I like this card for a few reasons. First, it costs only 1, so low to the ground. Second, you can play around it, knowing it's in your deck. You're not going to put it in a deck. You're going to put it in a creature heavy deck, so that you can be casting more than one spell each turn, or and not get hampered by that enchantment. But also, unlike Curse of Exhaustion and Arcane Laboratory, which I see occasionally, it is across the whole table, whereas of those enchantments, target one player, which kind of feels bad if you're hosing one person in a big multiplayer game. So, Deafening Silence, cool card. It's already, estimated at 127. Oh, I should mention, prices were, I got them off of MTG stocks on the day of recording, which was 1 week prior to the release of this video. So it's hard to really tell the prices on the cards because they haven't even been opened up in packs, with the exception of pre-release, which is not a whole lot of them. Then we got True Love's Kiss, which reminded me a lot of Slice and Twain. It's an instant that costs 4. It says exile target artifact or enchantment, draw a card. So replaces itself, which is nice. You can do it at instant speed, and it exiles, which is really important. I like this card maybe even more than Return to Dust. There's a lot of Return to Dust out there, and I see them all the time, and they're nice because it's a 2-for-1. True Love's Kiss does the same thing in a 2-for-1, in that you're getting rid of something, you're drawing a card, you're not removing 2 things, but you get to cast it at instant speed, whereas a Return to Dust, you have to cast at sorcery speed to get rid of 2 things. And sometimes there just aren't 2 targets that you want to get rid of, but there's something really bad that you need to get rid of, and you can't get full value out of Return to Dust. So I am a fan of this new card, True Love's Kiss. Blue cards. There's a lot of blue cards in this set that I think we'll see play. First one we're going to talk about is Frogify. I love this ability. It shuts off a creature. So it's an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature loses all abilities, is a blue frog, and has base power and toughness 1/1. So the other cards similar to this is Casmina's Transmutation and Deep Freeze, which I see quite often. These removals just suck because as opposed to having, should I say, they suck on your commander. As opposed to having your commander killed and you get to just put it right back into the command zone to cast, with commander attacks, you have to find a way to get rid of this guy. So attack into somebody or be able to block with it, and it makes it a lot harder to get access to your commander again. So this kind of removal I really, really like. Specific to on commanders. It's not as great on other creatures, but it's really powerful against commanders. Didn't say please. This is just a counterspell for a 3, but if you're playing a mill deck where you're trying to get rid of your opponent's library, you're going to run this, or you're probably going to run this. I already see Countermand and Broken Ambitions, which do the same kind of thing. You counter something, and then your opponent puts cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. This one gets 3 hits off of it, so solid card there if you're playing mill. Faerie Vandal, this is a 1/2 flyer for 2, 1 and a blue. Has flash, so you can play it, before your turn or whatever. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Faerie Vandal. There were a number of cards in the set that had this. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, do something cool. This is the only one I really thought was of note, and probably you're going to want to throw it in your Jorienne deck because she cares about getting multiple cards each turn. And putting this on turn 2 doesn't really feel like it feels good, and it's going to keep growing and growing until somebody removes it, and it's going to pretty easily be a big flying threat. Into the story, draws you 4 cards. I actually don't see anything that draws 4 cards in my meta. I do see Concentrate and Treasure Cruise, which draw 3 cards. Those are both sorcery speed, so that's the downside, but they can be cast for significantly less. Concentrate costs 4. Treasure Cruise, you can pay just 1 blue, or you can kind of choose the cost by delving cards into the story. Only costs 3 less if an opponent has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. So if you're playing a mill strategy, this will only cost you 4 to draw 4 cards, so it'd be a better concentrate, and it's an instant, so you can play it on your opponent's turn. Maybe they play that last card that gets 7 into their graveyard, and then you get to cast it on your opponent's turn, which feels good. So I think we might see this one. Mirrorfolk Secret Keeper, super good for mill strategies. There's a lot of mill in this set if you didn't notice. Mostly for this new mechanic adventure. So you're going to pay a blue, and then target player puts the top 4 cards of the library into their graveyard. And then later you can pay another blue, maybe just your next turn, and you get a 0/4 blocker. Blue mill decks don't really care too much about combat, so not having a lot of power doesn't matter so much. Having a 0/4 blocker for 1 blue, or paying 2 blue to get 4 cards from somebody's library and a 0/4 blocker seems like a really good deal. Other cards that are similar, we have Sage's Road Denizen, which is a 2/3, and Heraldic Explorer, which is a 3/3 for 4. Both of these cards cost more, and the Heraldic gets the exact same number of cards off of somebody's library. The Sage's Road does get stuff. Every time a blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can get 2 cards off of somebody's library. So he's a little bit more longer lasting, but Mirrorfolk Secret Keeper seems great to me. Mystical Dispute, I personally don't like this, but I'm sure I'll start seeing it. It's a blue, hate on blue card, so if you have a lot of blue players in your meta, you might want to start running this. It's similar to Mana Leak and Calculated Dismissal, so counter target spell unless it's a controller pays 3. Costs 2 and a blue though, so pretty expensive. I might as well just run a regular counter spell. You know, I guess the downside is it doesn't cost, or upside is it doesn't cost 2 blue, but this spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue spell. So for a single blue, you can counter something unless its controller pays 3. So I'm not too big a fan of these, but they come up in my meta all the time. Mostly it's that blue only player, and they just run tons and tons of counter spells. So they just include Mana Leak and Calculated Dismissal on every other counter spell they have. Overwhelmed Apprentice, more mill strategies. Comes in for 1. Each opponent puts the top 2 cards of the library into their graveyard, and you get a scry 2, and it gives you a 1/2 body. Solid. There's a couple other mill cards: Psychic Corrosion, Patient Rebuilding. Solid 1-drop if you're wanting to mill. Runaway Together. This is, I think, one of the best cards, one of the better cards that came out in this set. It's a 1 and a blue instant that says choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. So you can use it just to return 2 of your opponent's creatures to their hand and get some tempo advantage there. Or I like being able to use it to bounce your own creature. Maybe they're trying to murder it. You bounce your own creature and return one of their creatures to their hand. Or maybe you just cast it, getting some tempo advantage by returning their creature, and you return your own creature that has some kind of enter the battlefield trigger. I think this is a really versatile card that is going to start popping up all over the place. It's like having 2 unsummons in 1 card, or similar to a snap, which returns a creature, and you don't get to untap 2 cards. But Runaway Together seems like a really good card. Tomb Raider, I saw this and I thought, oh, there's a baby Muldrifter. Costs 3 for a 1/1 flying Faerie, and when it enters, you get a draw card. Muldrifter costs 5, it's a 2/2, and you draw 2 cards. So it's kind of like half. Similar also to Seagate Oracle, which costs 3 and essentially draws you a card. You do get a pick between your top 2. This one has flying, so I think if you have a flying type strategy, you might play this over the Seagate Oracle, or maybe just on top of, in addition to Seagate Oracle. Turn into a pumpkin. Here is an instant that costs 4. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand and draw a card. That's the exact same as Blink of an Eye or Into the Royal if either of them were kicked. So if you're a player who hates casting these for 2 and you always want to kick it to draw a card, you might as well play Turn into a Pumpkin, because you're not going to have to pay 2 blue, so a little bit easier. But if you do pay 3 blue, you get a food. So food is a new kind of token artifact that came out with this set, and food tokens say pay 2, sacrifice this artifact, gain 3 life. If you cast Turn into Pumpkin and you spend at least 3 blue mana to cast it, you get a food token on top of being able to draw a card and bounce a permanent. So if you like Into the Royal, throw this in your deck as well and see how it plays. Unexplained Vision is another draw spell. This one says draw 3, put Jace's Ingenuity and Weight of Memory in next to those because it's similar. This one also has Adamant as just like the Turn into a Pumpkin, so if you pay at least 3 blue for it, you get a Scry 3 first. Seems solid. It's not hard to cast in that it's 4 and a blue, so even if you didn't have those 3, it'd be okay to draw 3 cards off of a 5-drop sorcery. Witching Well. This one's cool. I like it. It's an artifact. You pay 1 for it, and you get a Scry 2. So some immediate value there. Later in the game, when you have extra mana, you can sacrifice the well and draw 2 cards for 4 mana. So it gives you incremental payments that you can do, and hopefully get a little bit of advantage off your opponents. Similar cards were Courier's Capsule, another incremental draw spell that I see, or Aether Spellbomb, which returns creatures to their owner's hands if you want to pay 1 blue, but if you got nothing else going on or somebody's about to blow up your Aether Spellbomb, you can sack it to draw a card. So a little bit of versatility there. On to black cards. Epic Downfall is a new card I think we'll start seeing. It's a 2 to cast sorcery that says exile target creature with converted mana cost 3 or greater. Most of the creatures that you're concerned about are going to cost 3 or greater, so this is going to hit most of them. The only downside is that it's a sorcery. So kind of similar to Ashes to Ashes or Sever the Bloodline. Those are the sorceries I see that exile creatures. Ashes to Ashes does get 2 of them for only 1 more, so that's pretty solid. You do have to take 5 damage to cast it, and Sever the Bloodline you can flash back, but it costs 4 to cast. So at only 2 and exiling something, Epic Downfall seems like a pretty good removal spell. Foulmire Knight is a 1/1 zombie knight with Death Touch, so a good deterrent to turn your opponents towards somebody else. Don't come at me because I'm going to trade with your big thing if you come this way, and you're probably going to want to cast it as an adventure first. So you pay 3 for it, you draw a card, you lose a life, and then pay an additional black and you get a 1/1 Death Toucher. Similar to the Phyrexian Rager, gives you a 2/2, draw a card, lose a life, or the Dusk Legion Zealot, which costs 2, gives you a 1/1, you draw a card and lose a life. This one does cost a little bit more, but you can cast it incrementally, and it gives you that Death Touch, which is so valid in a Commander game. Order of Midnight. Here is a recursion card that we're going to start seeing. Similar to the Gravedigger or Stitch Together, advantage is you can cast it incrementally again. So you can pay 2 to cast it as a sorcery and return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And then later you can pay 2 for a 2/2 flyer. Downside is it can't block, so you can only attack with it, but gives you evasion, lets you start hitting people. And I think I like it a little bit more than Gravedigger, which I see quite a bit. And then Stitch Together, I still think Stitch Together is probably better. It costs 2. If you have Threshold, so 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can put a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Otherwise, you can put it into your hand. But I'm definitely going to run Order of Midnight over the Gravedigger. Solid card there. Revenge of Ravens. I really like this one. I don't see this a lot. Hissing Miasma or the Marchesa's Decree. Those deter people from attacking you though, and I do see them occasionally. Whenever a creature attacks you, its controller loses 1 life. And then you gain 1 life. So that's what the Miasma does, and Marchesa's Decree does the same, except for if they attack a planeswalker you control in addition to that. You get a gain life, however, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control with Revenge of Ravens out. So if you're playing those other 2, you might throw this 3rd one in on top of it, and now you're really deterring your opponents from attacking you because they're going to lose a lot of life. So they really have to make each attack account or get rid of these enchantments before they come your way. On to red cards. Blow Your House Down. I don't think we'll see this one very often, but I do rarely see, occasionally see Falter, which says creatures without flying can't block this turn. And Blow Your House Down is a similar effect. It says up to 3 creatures can't block this turn, and then you get to destroy any of them that are walls. So that's cool that you get to get rid of walls if somebody's blocking. You rarely see walls unless somebody's actually playing a walls deck. So maybe if you have a walls deck and you're meta, you want to run this, and that it's like 3-for-1 kill spell. But I do see Falter occasionally, which taps it down or makes it so 3 creatures can't. All the non-flyers can't block. Sorry. Blow Your House Down gets 3, which is pretty similar. You don't usually have somebody who's got more blockers than that that are valid. And then you got the other similar card was Chandra Pyromaster, which we've actually already talked about for her 0 ability. Her +1 does a similar effect in that you can deal a damage to a player, deal a damage to a creature, and that creature can't block this turn. So it only removes 1 creature from blocking. So I don't really usually see her for that, but occasionally you'll see somebody use her +1 to remove a blocker. So Blow Your House Down. See if that's your jam. Crystal Slipper, a equipment that costs 1 and a red. Equip the creature for 1, and it gets +1/+0 and has haste. Haste, as you guys know, is really important in Commander in that a lot can happen between when you play a creature and then it goes all the way around back to your turn. There's a good chance your creature's not even there anymore. Swiftfoot Boots is definitely the most common card I see that gives creatures haste. Chariot of Victory is one that I like, that I see as well. And I'm probably, if I'm in red, I'm going to run this over the Chariot of Victory or most of the other equipments I have if I'm going for that haste keyword. Thrill of Possibility is just another Tormenting Voice, so maybe you play this in addition to Tormenting Voice. It's a 1 and a red, and it says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. The upside over Tormenting Voice is that it's an instant, so you're probably actually going to trade Tormenting Voice out if you don't want to run this in addition to Tormenting Voice. Cathartic Reunion is a similar card that costs 2, but you have to discard 2 cards to draw 3 cards. On to green cards. Beanstalk Giant. Yay, this one seems fun. It's a 3 to cast adventure or sorcery that says search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Not great. It's maybe fair. Similar to Fairhaven Elf, except you get a 1/1 body with Fairhaven Elf that gets you any card, or Wood Elves, which gets you a 1/1 body and a forest. The upside to the giant is that later you can cast him as a creature. So for 7, let's just say you don't have any mana rocks out and you cast him for 7, then he's a 7/7 creature, so he helps get himself there as well. Beanstalk Giant's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. I definitely think we'll start seeing this guy, unless you're playing a blink deck or a recursion deck, you know, where you want to recast or flicker your Fairhaven Elf, where you're probably going to run the Beanstalk Giant, because that 1/1 body doesn't matter a lot of the time, and when you just have that extra 7 mana, you can put this guy out and he's just a huge creature that people are going to have to block, or you can, you know, keep up as a defender to block and defend yourself. Keeper of the Fables, 4/5 body for 5. It's a creature cat, and it says whenever one or more non-human creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. You know, I usually see this kind of a thing in blue, but similar cards are Hunter's Insight, which, you know, when people get damage on you, they cast this and then draw a bunch of cards. Or another one that I see that draws cards off of combat damage is the Oakham Adversary, who's new from the recent Ravnica set. Oh no, he's another new one in, sorry, I was thinking of a different creature. Anyhow, the Oakham Adversary is a new one that's coming out that's similar to our Keeper of Fables, and he's a 2/3 with Death Touch, and he costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a green permanent, which is not uncommon in a 4-player pod. So here you get a relevant body for maybe 1 and a green, and then whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. Right, so I was thinking, I can't remember what card I was thinking of, but anyhow, here's a couple guys who like dealing combat damage and drawing cards off of it. and I think we'll be seeing both of these guys in the near soon future. Maybe you'll be the one running it. Kenris transformation, we already talked about the Frogify earlier. This does the same thing. Enchanted creature loses all abilities. Is a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3 and 3. So it's a bigger creature. Yeah, that's annoying, but still a 3/3 doesn't matter a lot. The upside on this one is that when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So great cantrip there. You get to deal with your opponent's commander and draw a card off of it. Similar to Lignify, gives them a 0/4, or Valve Wildness, which doesn't entirely remove them, but it makes it so that your opponent can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. So these are the other enchantments I see that are similar. I definitely like Canvas Transformation, mostly for that draw card. Once and Future. Here's a new card I'm not sure about. Let me just read it for you. It's a 3 colorless, 1 green instant that says return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Put up to 1 other target card from your graveyard on top of your library. Exile Once and Future. So get 1 card back to your hand, put something else back on top. However, it has Adamant, so if you pay at least 3 green to cast it, you get to just put both of those cards back into your hand. So you're going to get 2 cards off of it, hopefully. The other cards that I see that are similar are Reviving Melody and Creeping Renaissance. Creeping Renaissance costs 5, but it gets you back a whole bunch of, usually creatures, but it gets you back all the permanents of a certain type from your graveyard to your hand. Plus, you can flash it back. That does cost a little bit more, but it's only 1 more. And another one that costs 1 less says choose 1 or both, Reviving Melody, 2 and a green. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and or return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. So not as versatile as Once and Future. Once and Future can hit any 2 cards. Reviving Melody has to get a creature and or enchantment. So I think we'll start seeing this one. I'm not really sure. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this card, if you're going to start running it, or if you think this is just a total garbage trash card. On to multicolored cards. Maraleaf Pixie is a 2 to cast, so green and blue, for a 2/2 flyer that says tap, add green or blue. It's a mana dork with flying. I think we'll start seeing this one mostly for that keyword flying, in that, early on it helps ramp you a little bit, but also late in the game it can block those big flyers or maybe even attack itself, and has that nice evasion on it. Similar 2-drops that I see were Beastcaller Savant or Channeler Initiate. Neither of them have flying at all, but they do cost 2, and they're mana dorks that I see in my meta from time to time. So anyhow, Maraleaf Pixie, if you're in Simic, you might want to think about playing that one. Thunderous Snapper, here's another one I'm unsure on. Similar to the Soul of the Harvest or Garruk's Pack Leader, is a 4/4 that costs 4 in any combination of green and blue. And it says whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, draw a card. So if you're running tons of things that cost 5 or more, you're just going to keep drawing into more and more fuel to continue your game plan. So I like this card. I would rather probably have an enchantment or artifact that draws me cards, because he's just kind of open, he's open to board wipes and things like that. But Soul of the Harvest and Garruk's Pack Leader are as well, but those are all a little bit easier to trigger, I think. Colorless card, we have Clockwork Servant. It says Adamant, so pay 3 of the same color. When Clockwork Servant enters the battlefield, if at least 3 mana of the same color was spent to cast it, draw a card. It's a 2/3 body for 3 that draws you a card if you're in a monocolored deck. So I think that's solid for probably for white or for red that suffer a little bit in the card draw department. Filigree Familiar is I see play, and it draws cards on death. So Clockwork Servant's definitely, I think, better than that in a monocolored deck, since it gets you that card a little earlier. Another card I think is similar is Arcane Encyclopedia. I don't see this one that often, but it's a solid card that's just going to get you a lot of cards throughout the game that people don't really target, because because it costs a lot. This first card you get is going to cost you 6 mana, and then 3 more each card after that. So there's usually better targets for your opponents. Golden Egg. I like this card. It's Prophetic Prism with upside. So it enters for 2, it draws you a card, and then you can pay 1 and sacrifice the egg to add 1 mana of any color. So it helps fix you, but only one time. The upside, in my opinion, is that late in the game you can pay 2, you draw a card, and then you can sacrifice it to gain 3 life. I don't know if I like it more than Prophetic Prism or the same. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think I like the Golden Egg a little bit more. Otherwise, there's Commander Sphere, which is similar in that it continues to add you mana, but then you can sack it to draw a card later in the game. Heraldic Banner is a 3 to cast mana rock, so you can tap it to add 1 mana of the chosen color. You have to choose a color when it enters the battlefield. And then the creatures you can control of the chosen color get +1/+0. So this is a great way to buff your whole team up and be able to deal damage and also ramp. So I really like this card, and I think we're going to start seeing this one. Hall of Triumph and Dragon Throne of Tarkir are kind of similar. They're artifacts that buff your whole team. But this Heraldic Banner ramps you, so it seems like a really good card. Spinning Wheel's another solid card. 3 to cast, add 1 mana of any color. So Mantle, which I see. But then it has the upside of being able to pay 5, tap it, and you can tap target creature. The other 3 to cast mana rock I see most is Darksteel Ingot, which, yes, is indestructible, but all you can do is add mana with it. I think I would rather run Spinning Wheel over Darksteel Ingot as well. So solid card that I think we're going to start seeing around the table for sure. Witch's Oven. This is a sacrifice outlet. Those are always solid. This one gives you food. So sacrifice a creature, tap it, sacrifice a creature, create a food token. If the sacrificed creature's toughness was 4 per creator, create 2 food tokens instead. So somebody's going to board wipe, you can probably get 2 food tokens off of it. Somebody's targeting a creature to kill of yours, might as well sack it and get a food token out of it. Seems like a great way to kind of protect yourself a little bit, and maybe you can string it in a deck that has some life gain synergies. Other sack outlets that I see are Trading Post, which sacrifice a creature, return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Yes, that's probably better, but it costs 4 to enter. This one costs 1, and it doesn't cost anything to activate. And then Culling Dais, which is a little bit maybe on more similar playing field. Pay 2, and then you can tap it and sack a creature, put a charge counter on it, and then whenever you need to, pay 1, sacrifice it, and draw a card for each charge counter on Culling Dais. At any rate, having a sack outlet is always nice, especially if you're in a meta that runs a lot of board wipes or a lot of removal. Then sack outlets are good. Onto the lands. Mystic Sanctuary. They have these lands that sort of have like an adamant affinity for their same color. Mystic Sanctuary enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more other islands. So it is an island itself, which means you can fetch it if you're playing in non-budget realms. But if you have 3 islands already on the table, you put this guy down, it enters the battlefield untapped, and then you can put an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library, which seems really good. Probably, if you're in a 2-color deck, I would say you're solid to run this. Maybe 3, I don't really know. Probably 2. 3, you're going to be probably spread out too much. Similar cards are Halimar Depths, which helps you fix the top of your land, or top of your deck, or Memorial to Genius, which you can sack and draw some cards off of. So either way, you're getting card advantage off one of these cards. Mystic Sanctuary seems like a good one. Another one that gives you advantage is Witch's Cottage. It's similar to all 3, Mortuary, Mire, and Memorial to Folly. They all can get you a creature from your graveyard back to your hand or to the top of your library. Witch's Cottage, just like the last one, you need to have 3 swamps already on the battlefield. Then we've got reprints. Opt is one of the reprints that I see all the time. 25-cent card. It actually was pretty pricey right before Dominaria. I don't remember how much it was, but I remember it was not a cheap card because it hadn't been reprinted for a long time. But solid one to cast spell. Windscarred Crag and Thornwood Falls are being reprinted. See those all the time, but they're only in the Planeswalker decks. So if you pick up one of those, then I guess you just know that's in there. Return to Nature was another one that I think just came out. It's just naturalized with upside. I've had this in my deck since the Ravnica block. I think that's War of the Spark. So not that long, but I already have had a few times where this was sitting in my hand. Usually I want to blow up an artifact or enchantment, but there's nothing threatening, and then somebody's trying to get something back from their graveyard, and you can cast that to block them, which always feels good. And then Command Tower, which was in the Brawl decks, and is 180 right now. So I love it that it's still a budget card and that they keep reprinting it, and I hope they continue to reprint it. Brawl decks were going for like $40 at my LGS, which seems way overcosted for 60 standard legal cards. I think it's mostly there's a Arcane Signet in there, which is listed as a common, but it costs 2 as an artifact, and it says tap to add 1 mana in your commander's color identity, which is really good, but not $35 or $40 good. So favorite cards for me, I really like the Kenrith's Transformation and Frogify for that ability to just shut down a commander, and it still sits on the battlefield, which sucks for them. And then True Love's Kiss I like as well. Just all solid removal cards, but there's a lot of cool options. Let me know in the comments what cards you guys are most excited about that are coming out in the new Throne of Eldraine set. And I hope you guys found this video helpful. Peace. Thanks for watching. You can help support this channel by hitting that subscribe button. This will help keep you up to date on content from Budget Commander. If you liked the video, make sure you like the video. Leave me a comment with your thoughts on this topic. And if you think someone else could benefit from this video, feel free to share. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk with you next time.